The warm air that rolled up the narrow alley behind the street of flour reeked of yeast and horse dung, but Arya Stark breathed it in like it were winter wind on the wall. Long ago, scent had stopped meaning comfort. Scent was the first map of any place, a river that carried stories a watchful nose could read. In Bravos she had learned the fautor of clam-cutting wharfs, the perfumed canals under the moon pool, the copper tang that hovered beneath the house of black and white like a half-spoken warning. King's Landing, though, smelled of 7 contradictory hungers. Spiced Dornish wine unloaded at the quay, rotten cod forgotten in baskets beside the fishmonger's square, candles tallow-thick with melted fat inside Baylor's September, lavender powder spilling from silks at the Red Keep's West Tower, smoke from 1,000 hearths that never cooled, sweat brewed by small folk who labored in the shadow of a throne, and beneath every other flavor, the sour bite of fear. Fear that no jape could drown, fear that no prayer could bless away. She listened, too, always. The city's heartbeat clapped against masonry and cobble. A distant smith's hammer rang iron clarion. A barrow of oranges overturned, splattering pulp. A Myrish lute plucked the rainy season song, but only half a verse before the player kicked aside his stool to chase a pickpocket. Footsteps scuffed. Coins clinked. A hand slapped flesh. Maybe a horse thigh, maybe a cheek in anger. Arya marked the weight of the strike, measured the yelp, guessed which. Above it all towered the Red Keep, crimson as fresh blood in morning sun. Today's face was not her own. Ardra, aged 15, mousy of hair, pocked of chin, born in the night soil carts near Flea Bottom. Ardra who never learned a letter but knew every shortcut between Rainey's Hill and the Dragon Pit. Arya had stolen Ardra's countenance 2 days ago with a draught of milk of the poppy and a prayer to him of many faces. Ardra herself no longer breathed, her passing smoothed with the kindness of a silent servant. The girl had wished to fly beyond gutters. Now she drifted along black currents far gentler than streets. The debt paid, Arya wore her skin like a cloak, and no one looked twice at an underfed gutter snipe slipping through refuse. From a half-collapsed arch, she watched the gold cloaks change posts at the iron gate. They moved with the easy arrogance of men who believed the world owed them ale for every step. A month ago that had been an obstacle. Now it was a lantern guiding her path. Arrogance, she knew, is the easiest lock to pick. A raindrop splashed her brow. One, then another, quick summer spatter. She tilted her face to sky, tracing the clouds' drift. The gods disguised omens in weather. Jaqen had taught her so. Thick-bellied clouds, swift and low, drooped over King's Landing as though bowing to an unseen king. But the bows were shallow, grudging. Storms do not kneel willingly. Neither, she thought, did lions. Inside her jerkin, the blade of needle nestled. But tonight Arya favored poison over steel. Steel cried out, echoed, left stains too vivid. Poisons whispered. Some whispered so quietly they were mistaken for sleep. The city was full of whispers waiting to be bottled. She padded along a lattice of rooftop beams, shoes wrapped in rags to muffle the creak. Beneath, kitchens bustled in the shadow of the Red Keep's outer wall. Knots of smoke swirled from ovens. The White Sword Tower bell chimed the hour. 7 tolls, too late for breakfast, too early for dinner. Perfect. The Hall of the 100 Hearths served 2 things: thick stew for soldiery and information for the observant. Through a cracked shutter she spied cooks trading gossip faster than ladles. A master baker from the Rock boasted of commissions for Queen Cersei's name day pudding. Was it almond or lemon this year? A serving boy bragged he'd glimpsed the Queen last night in her solar, red-rimmed eyes staring into a blaze while a half-empty cup of arbor gold trembled in her fist. She muttered to herself, the boy said, voice quavering with the thrill of treason. Named every foe, cursed their bones. Tyrion, Marjorie, half the council. Lonely queens grow careless, Arya thought. She kept to the eaves, listening until talk shifted to dice and whores. Then she dropped to the palace path and melted into a column of washerwomen shuffling toward a cistern. The face gave her passage. No one stopped in Ardra. A stair spiraled upward behind a curtain of tapestry. She counted each step, 27, just as the rat catcher had sworn when she bribed him with a wedge of frostbark cheese. At step 17 a loose stone jutted. She avoided the ridge. At 23, webbing hosted a spider thick as a thumbnail. She left it undisturbed. Life has a way of repaying gentle hands. The corridor above wound past the Twilight Gallery, a smallish room where Lannister lions prowled across mosaic floors of red jasper and ivory. She crossed it on soft feet, admiring the way the torch's gold light flickered across tiles. Almost pretty, if one forgot the blood price hidden in the stone. At last her route spilled onto a sunlit landing overlooking the Queen's ballroom. She paused in half-shadow, measuring line of sight, tallying exits, gauging guards. 2 at each arch, 1 at the dais doors, none beneath the minstrel balconies. Cersei's pride again. Why guard the heights? Only laughter flew from the balconies during feasts. Laughter or crossbow bolts. But Arya needed neither today. From her satchel she drew a vial stoppered with black wax. Tears of Lys, they called it the gentle mother for the peace it brought. A single drop could lull a babe. 3 could still a stag. Cersei would down a flagon. Yet even the gentle mother must enter blood by mouth. So Arya's task was not to pierce flesh but to pierce routine. She timed the patrol's rhythm. 8 heartbeats to traverse the marble expanse. For to turn, 8 back. On the 9th cycle she slid into the shadows behind a candelabrum, heartbeat slow as winter sap. The guard passed within an arm's length. Ardra's guise concealed any hint of northern fury. As he pivoted, she glided onward, one more stray servant in a palace built of too many hungry mouths to track. In the Queen's solar, a single maid awaited her mistress's return. Arya slipped in as the girl arranged cushions of Myrish velvet around a high-backed oak chair. The maid muttered about grain tariffs and bastard bankers. Her lady fretted coin more than crowns these days. Arya bent to tie her bootlace. When the maid fetched a poker, Arya palmed 2 drops of Lys into the flagon of Myrini's red mellowing near the hearth. The wine's hue swallowed the poison like sunset swallowing a star. She left as quietly as she'd come, ghosting back down the tapestry stair. Only once did a knight brush past, his plate creaking. For a breath Arya tensed, but he spared her no glance. Rags are invisible to iron. Outside, rain had thickened, drumming the city with silver needles. Arya ducked beneath an awning and watched clouds coil around the Tower of the Hand, girdling it in storm like ivy. Somewhere beyond those walls, down secret corridors, Queen Cersei would soon dismiss her tired maid, wave away the latest letter from the Iron Bank, lift her goblet, and toast her own survival. 3 drops would ride the wine. The rain's hiss masked hoofbeats. A black coach clattered up the street, gilded lions roaring on its doors. Arya noted it but did not linger, until a familiar voice floated from the partly cracked window. "Tell your mother," Tommen Baratheon sighed, "that I wish to see her. She has not dined with me in a fortnight." The king, still only a boy, rode alone save 2 Lannister guards. Arya's stomach clawed at her ribs. Soft Tommen. She pitied him, though pity could not sway the many-faced god. All men must serve. Tonight Tommen would lose a mother, and the realm would topple into a darker night for it. Yet without night, the stars cannot shine. She turned away before conscience found a voice. At dockside, coin changed hands. A battered cog out of Pentos took payment to sail on midnight tide. "A girl may need passage," Arya told the bosun, "but names are too heavy for travel." The man grinned wide. Secrets were his trade. He would wait 3 days, no longer. 3 days would be enough. She wandered to the Blackwater Rush and knelt where the river slapped mossy stone. Rain dappled the water's skin, ripples overlapping like restless dreams. Arya touched fingertips to the river, imagining cold running swift beneath. "Needle," she whispered, naming not the blade but the promise. "Rob, Mother, Bran, Sansa, Jon." Names were stitches in the tapestry of her heart. Tonight she would cut a bold thread from the realm's weaving, one all Westeros would feel unwind. Night fell like mercy unearned. Cersei Lannister dismissed her ladies. She lingered by the fire, the goblet a brightness in her hand. She drank deep, then deeper, chasing heat that never reached her marrow. Ashes fluttered up the chimney. Somewhere beyond, thunder rolled. She laughed at the storm. "You cannot frighten a lioness," she said, though no one listened but shadows. When the gentle mother curled in her veins, Cersei's laughter softened. Limbs numbed, her eyes sought the fire, but flames blurred as if seen through milk. A soft drowse pulled at her lids. She clutched the cup, confused by its sudden weightlessness. "Wine," she murmured. "Another cup, Her legs folded. She slid along silk cushions, a queen on a sinking throne. In her final waking breath, she remembered the September of Baelor exploding in emerald. She smelled wildfire. She saw her children alive again, golden as dawn. A smile touched her lips, then slipped away, as gently as a petal sliding from bloom. At the same hour, Arya Stark stood upon the prow of the Pentoshi cog, rain washing Ardra's face from hers. She let the disguise fall, hair loose, eyes sharp as moonlight on broken glass. The city dwindled behind, torches glimmering like fragile truths. She tasted salt on breeze, the sea, and tears uncried. Her task was done, yet the list was not. Far to the north a name still burned brighter than wildfire. Walder Frey. Beyond him, Island Payne, Gregor Clegane, the phantom of Peter Baelish. The night is dark and full of names. Water slapped hull. Sails bellied. The cog slipped into deeper dark, bearing a girl who was no one and everyone. A girl who had killed a queen with a whisper. 5 hours of night remained before dawn, and every hour would swell with stories waiting to be birthed. Arya breathed them in, letting silence fill lungs grown weary of other people's breaths. Tomorrow she would wake beneath a foreign sunrise, nameless once more, and the game would begin anew. Morning's news arrived in brazen trumpets. Queen Cersei found lifeless upon cushions, flagons spilled at her side, a faint smile haunting her lips. The maesters found no wound. They spoke of failing heart, of debts of grief come due. But whispers multiplied faster than maesters could lecture. They whispered of ghosts, of Tyrion's dwarfish sorcery, of Tyrell plots, of Martell vengeance. In the Red Keep hallways, candles guttered low as servants bartered coin on which rumor would prove true. Yet none spoke the quietest truth of all, that death's design had been inked by a girl who once danced with swords upon a frozen yard in Winterfell. King Tommen wept, and with each tear the 7 kingdoms shuddered. Marjorie Tyrell clasped his trembling hand and promised sunshine soon. Kevin Lannister summoned council and spoke of coins, corn, and crowns. Jaime rode hard from Riverrun, wind howling grief against his helm. By the time he breached the city gates, the Iron Throne already bled unseen cracks. Without Cersei's ruthless will to bind its sinews, the Lion of Lannister began to devour itself. Beneath the Dragon Pit's shattered dome, Qyburn met with rag-clad acolytes, bartering secrets for promises of flesh. Varys collected tidings like spiders collect morning dew, spinning them into a web that stretched across narrow sea. Sailors swore sails bearing dragons stirred off Slaver's Bay. In Dorne, Illyria Sand's laughter rolled like thunder across hot sands. In Old Town, diligent scribes inked prophecy on vellum. When Lioness falls, the wolf shall howl and the dragon roar. Nobody believed, yet every man remembered. Arya did not. She rode winds and tides westward, to the Twins, where stone towers haunted memories of red wedding cakes of blood. The gentle mother had taught her, many paths of death exist, but the purest gift is certainty. Walder Frey dined nightly on his own certainty, that old men pass unseen beneath the stranger's gaze. Soon he would taste a certainty of different flavor. The Pentoshi cog made Tarth for water, then Mere for repairs, then drifted toward the mouth of the Trident under starfields polished by summer gales. One night, beneath an eyeless moon, Arya dreamed of her father's voice. "When the cold winds blow," Ned Stark said, "the lone wolf dies, but the pack survives." She woke with tears crusted on cheeks that had not been her own since childhood. She whispered to the dark, "The pack survives," and the wood creaked as if echoing oath. By dawn, the Trident glimmered copper under rising sun. She slipped ashore in fisherman's gray, as faceless as river mist. Riverland's fields had healed some scars, but smoke still haunted them in crooked columns where reaver bands roamed. Small folk spoke of Stoneheart who hanged Frykin by moon's pale lamp. Arya listened with a still heart. Rumors of her mother's corpse walking breathed hope and dread alike. Whether truth or candlelit tale, it stoked fires in her marrow. She followed the green fork past birch groves and ruined mills until the twin squat silhouettes smudged the horizon. Fry banners wilted in wind. Their blue chevron seemed a weeping river. Arya camped beneath an aspen thicket, stitching a new face. Mose Ella, a plow wife widowed by iron-born, left with no coin but strong back. Her jaw she padded with beeswax, cheeks with horsehair, a split lip from clumsy dye, eyes dimmed by soot. She smelled of turnip stew and bleakness. Guards pity women like Mose Ella, but pity is a blindfold as thick as greed. At dawn, gates opened for cattle drovers bringing herds to market. Mose Ella trudged behind with a sack of onions to trade. The guard winked her through, thinking of supper more than spies. Inside, Arya counted towers, courtyards, sentry routes, watch changes. Frays multiplied like mayflies. Names buzzed in her ears: Walder Witherspawn, Black Walder, Lame Lothar, Big Walder, Little Walder. She followed their scurrying, marking habits. The cookhouse proved richest. There, new faces never lingered in memory long, only meals. On the fourth night, she served ale at Lord Walder's high table, weaving unseen between lusty cousins. The old lord sprawled like a gargoyle in carved chair, chin wreathed in white whiskers. He pinched a young buttermaid, laughed when she winced, then drained another flagon. Halfway through the sixth course, quail stuffed with figs, he belched, smacked lips, and demanded jellied eels. Mose Ella complied. Under the gravy's sheen, basilisk venom waited. Slower than manticore, swifter than the gentle mother, a compromise for a crowded hall. It stole breath before suspicion. Walder Fry brought spoon to lips thrice. On the fourth, his throat closed like a drawbridge at dusk. He coughed, eyes bulging, clawing collar, but sound dried to a wheeze. A hush fell. Knights sprang to feet, but too late. Walder's heart hammered, then cracked. Like ice under spring thaw, one loud snap. The twins' lord slumped forward, face in eels, dead. Panic is a many-tongued minstrel. It sings 10 songs at once. Some phrase shrieked, others brandished steel, others stared as if the stranger himself strode among dishes. Amid the uproar, Arya slipped through a servant's door, discarded Mosella's rags, donned a stableboy's tunic, and melted into shadows of the west wall. By the time Black Walder roared orders, she had already saddled a piebald mare. Hoofbeats thundered out the postern gate into moonless night. Word raced swifter than ravens. The lioness felled by dream sleep in King's Landing. The lord of the crossing struck by some devil's hand. 2 great predators gone in breathing. The realm's balance lurched. Some blamed Dornish daggers, others whispered of dragons stirring in Essos. Only Varys suspected a pattern. Footprints across corpses too light to weigh yet curiously shaped, as if a cat with a girl's shadow trod there. He sent whispers east and west, testing echoes. In the Vale, young Lord Robert clutched his doll and sobbed when Maester read the Raven. Words of death frightened him, yet visions of sweet sisters revenge heartened Sansa Stark within the Aerys' secret halls. Down in Old Town, Samwell Tarly compared dates. Every fall of a great enemy corresponded with fresh tales of a faceless shadow glimpsed near river or keep. He told Gilly, "Someone's cleaning the board." In Meereen, Tyrion Lannister received 2 letters in one wind. One spoke of Cersei's quiet passing, the other of Fry chaos. His cup of wine tasted suddenly of ashes. Daenerys Stormborn tapped parchment with painted nail. "The lioness is gone," she mused. And the phrase bleed. Who moves these pieces, I wonder? Above the banks of the Blue Fork, under banners of pine and snow, the Brotherhood without banners found a girl feeding her horse. Thuras of Myr recognized no name in her eyes, but Lemoncloak felt a chill. "There's death on her," he growled. The hound, who rode with them now, barked a laugh. "Death on all of us, Lemon." Arya touched Scarface's muzzle and listened without turning. Thuras slid from saddle, amber eyes gentle. But before he spoke, Beric Dondarrion stepped forth from shadow, flame sputtering from sword, light flickering across his patchwork scars. "Leave her," Beric said. "The Lord of Light shows no fire in her path, only frost. Let winter wolves pass." Arya met his gaze. In it she saw respect tinged with mourning. She nodded once. No words. They parted like branches bowing beneath separate storms. She set north then, drawn by nameless hunger. Somewhere beyond snow-capped peaks a brother fought alone. Jon. The thought warmed and wounded. She was no longer a girl following a brother's footprint. She was the wind that erased prints. Yet still she longed for pack. The road to the neck wound through leagues of mud and blood. In lonely inns, rumors grew fangs. A masked made slitting throats, specters riding pale mares. Even tales of Nymeria's giant wolf pack devouring fry patrols in Wolfswood night. Arya smiled at that. Once she had glimpsed her dire wolf in storm-blasted dreams. Yellow eyes haunting moonlit bank. Did Nymeria sense her sister's work? Autumn bled into winter as she crossed marshy causeways, dodging Bolton scouts. By the time Moat Caelin's crumbling towers loomed, snowflakes twirled like kisses from dead gods. Arya slipped between reed-born mists, skirting iron-studded gates where flayed-man banners hung limp. Boltons bragged that no spy breached the moat's chokehold without leaving skin behind. Yet rags of traffic still passed. The hungry, the lost, the desperate. So many faces that a single new one stirred no notice. She lingered long in shadowed arch, studying the garrison's habits. 2 sergeants dice until moonrise. 3 archers rotated the wall walk. Kennel master snored by hearth after supper. Kennel door unlatched. She loosed 3 hounds, whisper quiet. The beasts liked the cold. Their absence went unnoticed until dawn. By then their jaws closed around sentries' throats far afield, leaving gory puzzles in powder snow. With gatehouse unguarded, Arya scaled outer wall, slid through yet, and greased the chain of portcullis with lamp oil. At sunrise, Stannis' outriders appeared, ragged but resolute. Arya's work turned keys. Their work swung doors. Moat Caelin fell before midday. Northerners cheered. Bolton men died or fled, pinched in Marsh's maw. In their victory, soldiers spoke of a girl seen upon battlement just before chain ratchets slipped. A girl with gray eyes gleaming like dawn on ice. But she vanished before they found her, leaving only the echo of wolves. In White Harbor's great hall, Lord Wyman Manderley all but sang when ravens brought news. Cersei dead, Fry dead, Moat Caelin taken by miracle. "The lion's roar broken," he crowed. "The twins' bridge in splinters." He feasted fat nights on honeyed ham and jellied goose, speaking openly of banners he would raise for House Stark at winter's call. "I swore to the young wolf," he said, voice thick with wine. "I swore salt and bread. Let Fry wraiths choke on their own false vows." On the day sail drums beat in harbor, Arya boarded a whaler heading for Skagos under alias of Osha's niece. She spent the voyage gutting cod and watching Orcus breach slate waves. Each breath of brine reminded her of Jon's stories of the wall. Air so sharp it carved lungs fresh. She wondered if memory would match truth. The whaler anchored at Eastwatch 2 moons before the worst winter storm. Wildlings camped outside gates, half-starved, but Jon Snow, now Lord Commander, opened stores in defiance of old laws. Arya slipped through milling tribes, head down beneath heavy cloak, heart fluttering like a finch. Was she ready? She had become so many voices, so many deaths. Would he know her? Atop the wall, she found him speaking with Tormund Giantsbane, hair whipped by wind. She almost called his name, but the word stuck, her mouth full of strangers' tongues. Instead, she unwrapped a linen bundle. A pale mask of Arden Fairskin, a pampered courtesan from Bravos. She dropped it over the edge. The wind took it, letting it tumble down endless white. With it fell everything Arya had been to cross oceans and wars. Jon turned. Gray eyes met gray. happened without fanfare.
No speeches, no horns.
Just a small, soft exhale. He stepped forward, gloved hand trembling. She nodded once. Yes, it's me. And tears came hot, carving tracks through frost on her cheeks. I thought you dead, he whispered. Not yet. He pulled her into arms that smelled of pine smoke and leather oil. His cloak wrapped her like winter fur. She let herself be small, just for heartbeat. He did not ask where she had wandered, whom she had killed. He asked only if she was hungry. And so, over a bowl of thin broth, Arya told fragments. A coin and a name, a city of canals, a queen's last smile, an old wolf's last feast. Jon listened without judgment, only sadness and pride unsaid. Night fell again, and in the barracks Arya slept without fear. But dreamless rest eluded. Moonlight found her awake, staring at rafters. She realized her list had grown thin. 2 names left: Island Payne, Ser Marin Trant. 1 hunted coin in Casterly Slarders. 1 guarded royal girls in Bravos. Coincidence or fate? Perhaps the many-faced god wove ends in circles to test his servants. Jon spoke of White Walkers stirring beyond Frostfangs, of Hardhome lost to Blizzard Whites. The war for the dawn is upon us, he said. I need every sword that still remembers how to care. Arya touched Needle's hilt. She thought of lists. Not just those to kill, but those to save Sansa, Bran, Rickon if he lived. Could she trade vengeance for Dawn? She spent 3 days pacing parapets, watching the wall's blue heart glow in starlight. On the 4th dawn, she found Jon in command tent, quill scratching parchment. She laid Needle across the map's whitened valleys. I will fight for the living, she said. But first I must end 2 ghosts behind me. When I return, no face will matter but my own. Jon brushed snow from the blade, eyes shining. Come back, promise. I swear it on Needle. South again she rode, passing silent forests where elk trekked through drifts. She moved like a rumor of wind, leaving no hearth warm enough to remember. Island Payne lurked at Casterly Rock, they said, a tongueless wraith polishing the lion's fong, nostalgic for heads rolling on Baelor's steps. When Arya infiltrated the rock disguised as a squire's squire, Payne never woke from dreams of blood. A single stroke of Valyrian catspaw parted artery clean as butcher's work. The castle's forge fires roared too loud to hear him gurgle. Bravos drew her last like tide. Ser Marin Trant strutted there, teaching disguised princes how to swing a wooden sword. Arya used no poison, no mask. She walked into his training yard at dusk, tossed aside her hood, and let him see stark eyes. His shock gave her first strike. Needle slipping between ribs, sliding under sternum, a lesson older than any master at arms. He died whining for mercy. She granted none. The list was ended. And yet, on a night of no moon, standing on a Bravosi bridge carved of lavender marble, Arya felt no release. Vengeance is a blade without hilt. You grasp and bleed. She pressed palm to heart, waiting for peace. Only quiet answered, and quiet is not peace. She recalled Jaqen once saying, a girl is not a candle to be snuffed. A girl is the spark. Sparks seek kindling. Westeros was dry would stack too high, too long. War for dawn would ignite soon. Sparks choose whether to guide or devour. Arya stared west where Mother's world slept beneath winter. She turned her back on Bravos. Dawn tinged horizon like promise. She walked until the last shadow of the House of Black and White vanished from mind, leaving only the shape of her own face, unfinished, waiting to be written. Across narrow sea, ravens beat icy air. They bore letters from the wall, letters sealed with direwolf's head. The dead march. We need every heart that still beats. Lords weighed pride against frost, some too slow. In King's Landing, Marjorie governed a fractured court, Tommen clinging like ivy to her poise. Varys whispered of a motherless throne cracking. Ironbank envoys tallied debts, demanded iron or gold. No lion roared to answer. In Riverlands, House Frey dissolved into cousin wars, bridges crimson with kin blood. Brothers without banners seized grain for small folk. singing of the lightning lord who would not stay dead. North of Winterfell, figures stitched pale sigils on gray banners. A direwolf crowned by northern lights. Arya's ship crested swells toward those lights. She stood at prow, needle-belted, her breath misting white. The world had changed by her hand, yet fate remained unbound. She closed eyes, hearing wolves howl beneath Aurora. One last journey, one last face, her own. Pay with life, win life. The many-faced god smiled in every snowfall. Arya smiled back. Snowflakes danced across deck, weightless, unique. She caught one on gloved knuckle, watched it melt. So passes every name. She mused, but the song outlives the singer. Far ahead, the wall shimmered like forged moonlight. Home and doom and dawn. She tightened cloak, steeled heart, and whispered to the coming dark, I am Arya Stark of Winterfell, and I serve the living. The wind answered, carrying her words north beyond sight, into stories not yet told, over battlefields not yet blooded, toward a sunrise none yet dared imagine. Snow clouded the eastern horizon in sullen drifts when the ragged cog cracked a sheet of gray ice and nudged its prow against Eastwatch by the sea. From deck to quayside the harbor seemed abandoned, a graveyard of frost-stiff nets and silent cranes. Yet as Arya Stark disembarked, boots crunching on hoarfrost, she felt the wall breathing above her. An unseen, colossal lung exhaling chill through every timber. No keep in Westeros possessed such scale. Stone and frozen water soared together until they stole the sky. Sailors muttered prayers and hurried cargo, but Arya paused, letting the gale slap color into her cheeks. She tasted salt, heard gulls crying like widowed ghosts, and remembered the first time she had seen Winterfell's godswood. Awe then, awe now, but sharper, because this place was not merely old, it was final. A sentry in black furs hailed her from behind a barricade of stacked lobster pots. Snow stuck to the whiskers of his hood, frosting him white. She named herself Cat, short for Catelyn, a salt wife's orphan, and offered the forged parchment Samwell Tarly had pressed into her palm before she sailed. An order bearing Lord Commander Jon Snow's seal demanding quarter for one trusted courier. The guard squinted, then waved her through the postern leading into the belly of Eastwatch. No ceremony, no questions, only weary nods from men too tired for suspicion. Safety, she thought, is an opiate for the vigilant. Inside, corridors sweated meltwater despite glacial temperatures outside. Braziers fought fruitless duels with drafts, making air shimmer. Black brothers rubbed blistered hands, sharpening swords that looked laughably small when set beside walls of ice thick as misery. Most ignored her. A few watched the courier with dull interest, but Arya's packhorse shoulders and drooping hood disguised any spark of trouble. Through a narrow arch, she glimpsed a ravenry stacked with cages where hooded messengers croaked in the half-light. Scrolls sprouted like dead leaves from wicker baskets. Pleas for grain, warnings of deserters, panicked reports of blue-eyed corpses walking. A maester with red-rimmed eyes plucked wax from his ear and hissed at an underrook who bled from a bite. Even birds turn feral when the world ends, Arya mused. A spiral stair led to Eastwatch's wind-hauled rampart. She climbed, counting steps, steadying breath. Above, the sky had darkened to pewter, heavy with new snow. When she emerged, she found Jon Snow waiting beside a brazier, as though drawn there by some unspoken thread. He wore a heavy wool cloak pinned with the Stark direwolf, and a new scar crossed the bridge of his nose. Frostbite or blade, she could not tell. His eyes, though, remained the same steel gray that once scanned Winterfell's courtyard for practice arrows. He did not smile, only inclined his head in silent greeting. Between them hung the knowledge that every reunion had cost blood too precious to name. She stood a moment, rocking on boot heels, uncertain whether to bow or jest or collapse into his arms like the little sister who used to chase cats for sport. In the end, she did nothing but breathe, and he seemed to understand. "Come," he said, "the fire's warmer below." They descended to a chamber cluttered with half-mended shields and mounds of dragonglass spearheads. A kettle bubbled on a stove. Ghostly steam moved like lost souls around the rafters. Jon ladled broth into clay cups. The scent, Marrow, carrot, stale ale tugged memory. She accepted the cup, wrapped both hands around it, and pretended the tremor in her fingers came from cold alone. He spoke first, soft. Sam's raven reached me weeks ago. I knew you were coming, but still, I worried the sea might disagree. She finished, voice hoarse with salt rot. Yet here I am. Arya, words failed him. His gaze flicked to the door, as if afraid someone might overhear heartache. She sipped broth. Say it. I'm glad you're alive. A laugh escaped her, raw, too loud. That's the trick, isn't it? Staying alive long enough to matter. Jon absorbed the bitterness without flinching. You matter to me. To you, she thought, and maybe to the dead waiting beyond those gates. She drained her cup, set it aside. Tell me what's changed since your last letter. He spread a ragged map on the table. Ink bled in spots where meltwater had dripped. Pins marked watchtowers. Inky blue arrows indicated White Walker sightings. 1 at Hardhome, 2 south of the Milkwater, 3 perilously close to Queen's Crown. Arya traced the southernmost arrow. That's inside the gift, she whispered. Past the wall. They have been across for weeks. Bit by bit, small bands. We burned a hamlet yesterday, couldn't save the villagers. The whites rose before dawn. He tapped a cluster of red pins, a ring around Castle Black. We're moving everyone toward the center. Eastwatch and Shadow Tower will fall back next. Supplies? Barely enough. He grimaced. Tormund's men are fierce hunters, but even giants starve when snow swallows the game. Arya slid a dragonglass dagger into gloved hand, testing the weight. Obsidian edges caught torchlight, glinting ravenwing violet. How many of these? 7 barrels. Gendry-forged arrowheads, spear tips, short blades. Not enough for the realm, enough for one desperate stand. And Valyrian steel? 3 swords. Longclaw, Oathkeeper, Heartsbane. Brienne rides from the south with the last 2. He exhaled, fogging the map. If she makes it in time. Arya spun the dagger, returning it to the pile. We must gather every ounce of leverage. She gestured at the map's blank expanse beyond Shadow Tower. The Night King is out there. Kill him, the rest crumble. So they say. Jon's jaw tightened. Bran saw it in visions. But getting close is death. So is waiting. She met his eyes. I didn't come north merely to stand in a line. The House of Black and White taught me another way. A silence followed. Braziers cracked. Jon eventually sighed. The officers will protest. They fear losing me, and they know little of you. Let them. Arya tugged her hood back, revealing the face the world believed dead. The walkers won't grant them petitions. Either we strike at their shepherd or we feed their flock. She leaned over the map, stabbing finger at a narrow glen west of Frostfangs. Here. Bran's ravens saw him here once, near a frozen lake. If we cut through Skirling Pass and hug the cliffs. A patrol of 9 attempted that route last fortnight. Jon's voice broke. Only one returned, and he lost both hands to frostbite before he could scratch a report. Then send fewer. Her smile lacked warmth. And send me. He folded arms. You're my sister. I was your sister long before I became his, she said, nodding at the dagger. The many-faced God accepts my service. I can walk among the dead if I choose. Jon recoiled. More magic you learned across the sea? She flexed fingers. Masks and whispers are tools like dragonglass. I can mimic a white's pallor, imitate their stagger. Their eyes are blind to anything without heat. So you freeze yourself? I slow my heart. It isn't pleasant. Her gaze drifted to the cup, remembering frosty tomb water back in Bravos. But it fools men. I hope it fools them. Jon ran a hand through dark curls, leaving snow granules. If you fail, I lose you, and hope. He shook head. There must be another way. There isn't time. Fires dim, food thins, and the realm squabbles over crowns that will soon be bones. Let me do this while we still have breath. His shoulders slumped. I need confirmation. Talk to Bran, she urged. He will see. The raven at window cawed, as though seconding her plea. Jon closed eyes, weighing futures. At last he nodded once. One companion, he said. Someone who knows the wild, can cut you free if... Gendry. Jon blinked. The smith. He runs fast, swings a hammer harder than most swing a sword. He'll keep pace, carry pack, hold a torch when my heart stalls. And if your heart stops? Arya's answer was hard. Then kill me where I fall. Jon's face twisted, but he offered no word of refusal. I'll ready supplies. At first light, she lifted her dagger then, pressing flat of the blade to his chest. We Starks are wolves, she whispered. When the wind blows, the pack survives it together. Trust the runt to bite hardest. He caught her free hand, squeezed until she felt the tremor in his bones. Come home, he said. She did not promise. Oaths weigh like chains. Night deepened over Eastwatch. Arya trudged along the inner wall, snowflakes spiraling around lanterns. She found Gendry hunched beneath a shack awning, sleeves rolled despite frost, hammer sparking on red-hot blade. His brow glistened. He glanced up, blinked at the stranger, then recognition warmed his expression. Arya, unless you know another girl with shorter temper than a drunk Lannister. She wiped soot off nose. How's your arm? Still attached. He quenched the blade in brine, hissed at the sizzle. What's wrong? Adventure, she replied, handing him a flask, the sort that ends songs. He drank, coughed at the fiery liquor. We marching or running? Both. She told him the plan, cloaked in murmurs between hammer strikes. Gendry listened, jaw hardening. When she finished, he tapped the newborn sword on anvil, forging a promise. He slid it into trough again, eyes reflecting crimson glow. I'll be ready. What of your brothers here? She asked. They'll still be cursing the anvil when we're ash.
No offense.
He smiled crooked. Better die swinging than pounding metal. Arya smirked. Save the heroic lines for someone who weeps. Like you. He winked. Idiot. Wolf. They parted, each gathering ghosts of courage. Arya returned to her cot in barracks, removing boots, flexing toes numb from hours. She drew needle, polishing the slender blade until it shone silver, like moonlight bottled. The cabin smelled of wet wool and lamp oil. Around her, brothers snored, spears stacked near pallets. She studied their faces, sallow, bearded, some hardly older than she had been at King's Landing. Guardians of the realm, yet here they were, sleeping under holes in the roof while an apocalypse assembled beyond the woods. Courage is not the absence of fear, she thought, but duty forging fear into something sharper than despair. She placed needle across her chest and drifted to half-sleep. Dreams came restless. The red keep blazing, Walder Frey's throat swelling, Cersei's lips curving in poisoned smile. Nymeria's howl stitched the visions. Beneath, the watch's horn bellowed 3 times. Monstrous, echoing. Arya bolted upright. Shouts filled corridor. She kicked into boots, grabbed spearpoint satchel, slung cloak. Outside, the yard seethed with men scrambling to wall walk. The horn boomed again. She intercepted a running steward. What? Runners from the east, he gasped. Dead behind them. She pushed through throng. Atop the rampart, wind almost tore her hood away. Torches revealed 2 silhouettes lurching through knee-deep snow toward the gate, pursued by a black tide of shapes. The dead moved strangely, jerking, unnatural, limbs hinged wrong. Blue eyes glowed like distant stars. Arya's stomach knotted, yet calm settled in her veins. The assassin's hush. She knocked dragonglass arrow on borrowed bow, exhaled. The shaft flew, embedding in leading white skull. It dropped in a heap, scattering bone shards. Brothers echoed the shot, volleys whistling down. Fire arrows streaked. Some found bodies, burst into orange bloom. But the dead never slowed. At the gatehouse crank, for men strained to lift the portcullis for the survivors. Gendry stood among them, muscles bulging under boiled leather. He roared, metal squealed, Iron teeth lifted just enough for the two survivors, wildling scouts, to tumble inside. The crank locked, gate slammed just as the swarm reached the bars. Talons clanged against steel. Jon arrived, Longclaw bare. Pale fire flickered along Valyrian steel, reflecting in his eyes. He directed archers, called for pitch. Arya loosed arrow after arrow until her fingers bled. The others did likewise, but for every corpse that shattered another rose from. Snowdrift. Then, as suddenly as storm birth, the horde retreated into night. No roar, no trumpet. A rolling silence that chilled deeper than their presence. Torches crackled. Brothers muttered prayers. Jon called ceasefire and looked to the survivors, now swaddled in furs at brazier. They told of a gathering, a spiral fortress carved into the frozen lake Arya had marked. Thousands of dead assembled, white walkers ringing them like statues of ice. At the center stood the Night King astride an undead stag, raising fallen giants from beneath cracked ice. They had watched until the wind stole all warmth from their limbs. When they fled, they sensed the army following. The council convened in Eastwatch's common hall before dawn. Snowmelt dripped like a slowly ticking clock. Jon, Tormund, Dolorous Ed, Gendry, and the two wildlings formed a huddle around still wet map. Arya stood at Jon's shoulder. Arguments erupted. Too risky, too few, wait for Daenerys and her dragons, send ravens south. But ravens take days, dragons take weeks, and the dead march now. Arya raised hand. "Give me 6 hours," she said. "I can reach the lake on foot faster than any patrol. The Night King will still be positioning his whites. They won't expect a lone shadow to creep through." It scoffed. "A lone shadow gets stomped by a giant quicker than piss freezes mid-arc." "Then I'll be shorter target," she replied. Murmurs circled. Tormund scratched his red beard, eyes flicking between her and Jon. Gendry spoke. "She's not alone. I go." Arya cut him a frown. "You'll slow. Save it." He thumped breastplate. "Someone has to haul your stiff corpse back." Tormund laughed like cracking ice. "A pair of little wolves among the dead. Makes a good song." He sobered. "I'll send 8 of my fastest to flank you. They'll wait on ridge with torches. If you draw the walkers toward them, they'll scatter back to wall like rabbits. Might buy you minutes, maybe rope to climb out of the pit." Jon looked each in turn. "I won't order anyone to this." Gendry's answer, "Don't need ordering." Arya's, "Don't need permission." Dolorous Ed muttered, "Need brains, perhaps." But decision sealed itself in silence heavier than stone. Jon clasped Arya's forearm. "If anything feels wrong, everything feels wrong," she countered. "That's why we must do it." They gathered gear. White wolf pelts for camouflage, crampons for ice, dragonglass daggers, a coil of castle-forged chain, 3 glass vials of wildfire older than Robert's reign. The last amazed Gendry. He tucked them in padded pouch like fragile twins. Before the gate rose at sunrise, Arya paused beside Ghost. The dire wolf loomed spectral, scarred. She touched his muzzle, felt warmth beneath fur, leaned close. "Guard him," she whispered. Ghost huffed, eyes flicking to Jon as if promising much. Wind whipped snow flurries across her path as she and Gendry slipped into the white beyond Eastwatch. Behind, the wall groaned like an old war horn. Ahead lay drifts high as houses, silent pine forests heavy with rhyme, valleys where no living song stirred. They trod single file, each footstep swallowed instantly by whispering flake. Hours passed in wordless rhythm, breath steam, crunch, breath steam. Gendry carried a bundle of javelins across back, hammer at belt. Arya led, senses tuned. She felt the forest's heartbeat, the moan of trunks bending under ice, the hush when birds vanish, the prickling hush that means predators watch. They kept to lee of ridges, skirting open glens. Twice they spotted raven murder spiraling overhead, but the birds did not caw. They glided silent, unnatural. Near midday they reached Skirling Pass. Cliffs rose jagged, shedding icicles like broken spears. They paused in a crevice to rub limbs warm and share dried elk strips. Gendry eyed the path ahead. Looks like a throat-swallowing sky. Then we slip down its gullet, she replied. She poured a phial of concoction, milk of the poppy laced with nightshade, over a rag and pressed it to her chest, letting small doses dull pain while slowing pulse. Lips blued. She flexed hands until nails numb. If I blend, they'll ignore me. But you, I'll hang back with the wildlings. He tapped his hammer. And cause a racket when you need an exit. Light the torches only when I whistle thrice. 3 goat bleats. Gendry cracked grin. I can count. She allowed a sliver of smile. They parted at ridgeline where Tormund's scouts crouched under snow cloaks. They clasped wrists, passing silent promise. No matter who returned, tale would be told. Arya tightened her belt, adjusted face scarf, and slipped downward alone, leaving footprints that wind eagerly ate. The frozen lake lay ahead, an expanse of dull glass ringed by towering pine. Columns of ice jutted from its surface, sculpted by bitter gusts until they resembled ribs of a leviathan. At the far side stood the spiral fortress, concentric barricades of lumber and bone, raised in uncanny symmetry. Whites moved between rings, stacking corpses, sharpening shards of obsidian, spoils from slain men. White walkers glided among them, armor crusted with rime, eyes blazing cerulean. They carried spears of ice that smoked in the cold, as though the air itself recoiled. At the vortex, on a dais of ice shards, the Night King towered atop his stag. From this distance, his crown of jagged scalp still glimmered mirror to moonless sky. Arya's heartbeat fluttered, but she willed it down, mind focusing on each step. She let the chill creep deeper, numbing lips, throat, lungs. Breath slowed until exhale left only faint mist. She stooped, smeared gray ash across cheeks, then marched among the outer whites. They did not notice. She walked their broken gait, shoulders slumped. One white, missing a jaw, lurched so close its ragged beard brushed her sleeve. Blue gaze passed over her as if she were smoke. She moved on. Inside the first ring, piles of weapons gleamed from Skagosi raids gleamed dull. She noted shapes. Glaives, rusty axes, crossbow bolts petrified in frost. The whites seemed curating an arsenal. Not mindless after all, guided. She advanced to second ring. Here the air tasted of rot and ozone. Shattered giant bones formed four-legged barricades. Massive whites, dead giants stitched with ice, strained at chains. She made a mental note. Free those giants, chaos might ensue. But time scarce. Approaching the dais, white walkers patrolled in figure-eight sweeps. They moved with fluid menace, spear points etching smoke in frigid air. Arya lowered gaze, adopting droop of spine. She clutched the wildfire vial like a last prayer. If she could fling it at the Night King and shatter it, dragonglass arrow might ignite the pyre. Wildfire burned even in snow. She reached within 30 paces of the stag before a sensation, prickling behind ears, warned her. She turned minutely. One white walker had halted, head cocked, nostrils flaring as though scenting life. Stepped toward her. His feet made no sound. Spears on the dais rose, whites paused. Arya fought instinct to flee. Her heart hammered, thawing veins. Warmth bloomed under ribs, dangerous. The walker hissed, frosty breath plume. Glittering ice armor reflected shapes. Her silhouette wore ragged cloak, but warmth betrayed her. She reached inside her tunic, slicing fingertip with needle until blood welled, then smeared it across lips. The taste of iron jolted senses, but she focused on slowing pulse again. The walker lingered, its bright eyes bored into hers, an abyss of winter. In that stare she glimpsed memory. Cities drowned in frost, forests splintering, children wailing. An ancient hatred, older than men's houses, burned like a blue star core. It raised its spear, tip swirling cold vapor. She reacted, dropping to knees, feigning collapse. Pulse dimmed. The walker advanced slowly in specks. Arya forced breath shallow, letting eyelids flutter. The walker bent, crystal fingers brushing her hair. She felt cold seep through skull. Her hand tightened on the wildfire vial. Wind gusted. Distant howl? Wolves or scouts? The walker jerked head toward the sound. Arya's eyelids snapped open. In one motion she shoved vial under its breastplate seam, drove dragonglass dagger through to break glass. Emerald flame erupted, devouring the walker in whoosh of screaming vapor. Blue eyes exploded in shards. She rolled backward as shards of burning ice hurtled. The conflagration climbed, wildfire clung to corpse, to ground, to air itself. Whites shrieked, stumbling toward fire like moths. Arya sprinted. The Night King turned, expressionless but aware, raising an arm. Blue lightning crackled along his spear. He hurled it. The bolt shredded 2 whites before lodging in ice where Arya had been a blink prior. She vaulted a pile of bones, ducked under giant chain, freed its clasp. The undead giant roared, ripping its mooring post, swinging the chain like whip. Whites scattered in confusion. Arya cut another. 2 giants now rampaged, crushing barricades. She whistled, a shrill triad that echoed across lake. Above the ridge, torches flared, 8 points of fire, swirling. The scouts hooped, banging shields. Whites turned toward disturbance. The Night King's stag reared. He gestured, sending a wave of dead sprinting up slopes after the decoys. Arya dashed opposite direction, heading for the lake's weak western rim. Behind, wildfire blooms lit night livid green, reflecting in her tears. She reached the shore, but the ice cracked beneath. Water seethed. She leapt, landing on rocky bank, knees jarring. She sprinted into trees where Gendry waited, breath pluming. "Move!" she commanded. They plunged into forest. Behind them, horns of ice sounded, deep, bone-rattling. Blue flares shot skyward, the Night King signaling pursuit. Snow exploded as the undead poured between trunks, relentless. The scouts appeared, guiding them to a narrow ravine. Gendry thrust torch into a cache of oily pitch they'd stashed earlier. Flames whooshed upward, forming barrier across ravine mouth. Whites piled against it, ablaze but advancing. Arya loosed arrows tipped with dragonglass. Each white shattered but others climbed over. The wall's silhouette, faint, rose far ahead, 5 miles, impossible sprint in deep powder. "We'll never outrun them," Gendry panted. Arya scanned treeline, spotted cliff overhang where icicles hung thick. She met his gaze. "We bury them." Together they scrambled up scree slope. Atop, they hammered iron spikes into fissures, attached Gendry's chain across 50-foot span above ravine. Gendry drove final spike as first white-clawed edge. Arya cut rope tied to an evergreen. Tree shuddered, dislodging snowpack. The chain vibrated. She tossed second wildfire vial down slope. It shattered, soaking snow in emerald. She struck flint. Sparks cascaded. Flames raced the chain like serpents. Snowfield collapsed under heat, releasing avalanche of fire-slick boulders. The gorge below filled with blazing white and green turmoil. Dead were swallowed, entombed beneath icy inferno. Smoke spiraled heavenward in fanged columns. Arya coughed, tears freezing. Gendry hauled her backward as ledge trembled. They stumbled into thicket, vision swimming, ears ringing. Far below, nothing stirred but crackling embers. Night stretched on. Exhaustion and cold gnawed. They limped through pines until a horn answered from wall. One long, two short, the prearranged call. Rescue sleds awaited in clearing lit by lanterns. The pair collapsed onto furs. Brothers hauled them inside, retreating before more dead investigated. Back within Eastwatch's wooden belly, healers stripped Arya's gloves. Her fingertips were bone white. Maester Aemon's successor dabbed salve, muttering about frostnip. She barely felt it. Jon entered, face stormy with worry. She struggled to rise. He pressed her shoulder, eyes wet though his voice remained steel. "Did you see? I put wildfire in his cadre," she rasped. "One walker down, giants unchained. He bled soldiers chasing ghosts." She calmed breath. "It won't stop him. Maybe slowed," Jon conceded. Gendry sat nearby, arm swathed where a shard grazed him. We bought hours, not days. Arya reached inside coat, drew the third wildfire file, unbroken. A gift for next dance. Jon accepted it. Brienne reached Castle Black tonight, he reported. She rides at dawn with Oathkeeper. Wildfire, more steel, maybe enough. Arya leaned back, closing aching eyes. In darkness she saw the Night King's devouring gaze. Yet beneath that terror throbbed a defiant ember. Life still breathed. She heard ghost howl on rampart, wolves crying answer across distance. The fight was not over. It was only beginning. Snow kept falling, day after day, as the watch consolidated. Brienne arrived, a tower of blue steel, blonde hair matted with rime. She and Arya clasped forearms in quiet camaraderie. Together they trained recruits, drilling spear thrusts aimed for chinks between spine vertebrae, teaching Southron lordlings that courage without technique was meat on a hook. Bran reached Eastwatch astride a sledge pulled by 6 rangy dogs. He greeted Arya with soft eyes distant as galaxies. "You stepped into his circle," he murmured, touching her scarred hand. "Now he sees you in dreams." She stiffened. "Then he'll know our walls." "He already knows." Bran stared beyond timber rafters. "But he fears the flame you carry. He fears choice." "What choice?" Bran's reply hovered on breath. "To break the wheel of death." She did not understand, yet she felt the weight of prophecy slump onto shoulders. In secret she practiced stilling her heart, lengthening the hush between beats, pushing the line closer between life and the faceless void. Each night she shed one face before sleep. Ardra, Mose Ella, Cat, burying them beneath pillow as if soil could hide their echoes. Gendry forged a new weapon for her. Twin daggers of dragonglass fused at hilts, forming a removable spear. She named it Wolf's Blood. In training yard they sparred until lanterns guttered. Rumors spread. The little she-wolf dances with shadows. Blades leap from her hands like fanged snowflakes. Meanwhile ravens flew south to Winterfell, to White Harbor, to Dragonstone. Marjorie Tyrell answered, promising grain convoys and Sellsword companies. Daenerys Targaryen's ships, slowed by storms off Shipbreaker's Bay, crept north with dragons overhead. Greyjoy longships escorted them, flags whipped ragged by gales. The living converged, fragile alliances knitting under threat of oblivion. Yet time, cruel time, slipped. Scouts vanished beyond haunted forest. The air grew razor-sharp, bright stars flickering as if shivering. One dawn, sun failed to rise. Instead a sickly aurora leached along horizon. Bran, eyes milk-white, whispered from trance, "He moves!" A council convened in Eastwatch's hall. Fire braziers failed to warm the stone. Jon spoke, voice echoing in hush. "The Night King marches south along the coast. He bypasses the wall where it meets the sea. Frozen waves coach his army around." Arya studied the map. "He sails on land," she said, picturing breakers solidified under impossible cold, forming a causeway of ice. Brienne slammed gauntlet. "We must meet him on open ground before he sweeps into the gift." Tormund grunted assent. "We drive Dragonfire along shoreline, break his flank." Jon eyed Arya. "We attack his head again. This time with dragons, Valyrian steel, dragonglass." He inhaled. "Arya, you will guide Daenerys through storm. Your eyes have seen the terrain." "I ride Ghost with advanced spears." She nodded slowly. "If I lead dragons, I'll need no mask, only courage." She touched needle hilt, felt heart steady. "Let's end this." They gathered on the frozen shore 2 days later. 3 dragons swept overhead, wings scattering snow in cyclones. Their fiery breath melted ice into crater lakes before flash refreezing in weird sculptures. Columns of unsullied formed shield wall. Northmen raised banners heavy with frost. Free folk howled war chants. At vanguard stood Arya beside Daenerys, whose silver hair whipped like comet tails. Jon astride Ghost just behind. Arya pointed to distant ridge where blue torches glimmered. "He'll crest there. When dragons dive, cut his flank. If he mounts another beast, Aim for rider. Daenerys's violet eyes burned. Your eyes, your strike. Dragons will follow. The battle ignited like dawn. Dragons shrieking down, torrents of flame carving curses across ice. Whites burst into steam. White walkers threw spears of permafrost that whistled deadly arcs. One struck Rhaegal's wing. Green dragon spun, bawling. Arya, riding behind Daenerys on Drogon's neck, leaned, guiding tilt by grip on spines. She saw the Night King below, mounted now on undead ice wyvern, spear raised. Down, she urged. Drogon folded wings, plummeted. Fire belched, but the Night King veered aside, wicked spear grazing scales. Arya hurled Wolf's Blood's spear segment. Dragonglass tip spun, slicing through air. The Night King parried mid-flight, blade of ice shattering the spear. Fragments clattered off frozen sea. Arya's eyes narrowed. She unclipped twin daggers, crouched. Drogon wheeled. She sprang from saddle, plunging down. Wind roar deafened. Weightlessness seized her heart. Below, the Night King looked up, curiosity flickering. She landed on the wyvern's spinal ridge, daggers biting for purchase. Blue flames licked edges of vertebrae, but she ducked. She sprinted along bone, each step measured. The Night King twisted, spear slicing. She flattened against scales, cold seared flesh. He jabbed again. She parried with left dagger, ice spear fracturing. He bared claws of pure winter, reaching. She feinted, rolled past, came up behind his flank. With right dagger, she pierced the gap between glacier armor plates at his back. Dragonglass sank into ancient flesh. A flash of blue light erupted, like lightning trapped inside gem. The Night King snarled soundless. She twisted blade, feeling sinew sever. But his hand closed on her collar, frostbitten strength lifting. Pain shot down her spine. He flung her outward. She tumbled through air, daggers spinning free. Below, Drogon roared, banking to intercept. She glimpsed the wyvern splintering, cracks radiating from wound, brightness blooming. The Night King's face contorted with something close to surprise. An instant later, the wyvern exploded in shards of ice and whirling snow. The blast hurled Arya sideways. Drogon's wings swept under, catching her like monstrous sail. She slammed onto scaled membrane, skidded but clung. Blue shockwave rolled across battlefield. White walkers froze mid-stride, then cracked like glass. Whites collapsed in heaps. Silence followed, heavy, stunned. Arya slid to Drogon's shoulder joint, chest heaving. Daenerys guided the dragon to land near Jon's line. Ghost barked, bounding through dunes of broken corpses. Jon looked up, hope dawning. Shards of ice littered beach like starlight. At the blast core lay the Night King's fractured breastplate, smoldering. Arya limped to it, retrieved the broken half of her dagger still lodged in armor fragment. Dragonglass fused with ice remains. Around them whites dissolved into drifting snow, lifeless for good. Men and women stared, disbelief slowly melting into cheers. The dead had died again, perhaps forever. Arya sank to knees. Exhaustion poured through bones, but triumph thrummed hotter than any fire. Jon reached her, wrapping cloak around shoulders. Gendry arrived limping, hammer blood-flecked, face split with grin. Daenerys dismounted, staring at fragment in Arya's hand. "You broke the long night," she whispered. Arya shook head. "We broke it." She gestured to Jon, to dragons circling over. Head to crowds. Together, Bran's dogs howled, and she thought they sang for all lost faces. Ned, Robb, Catelyn, Rickon. For every soul the war had devoured. Snowflakes still fell, but they felt lighter now, as if winter itself sighed in relief. Jon clasped her forearm. "Come home." This time she answered, "Yes." And when she said it, she found it weighed nothing at all. They rode south days later, through thawing drifts where grass speared upward like green promises. Columns of allied forces marched under shared banners hastily stitched. A direwolf flanking dragon, anchored by stag, rose, kraken, sigils of former rivals now bound by survival. Fires burned nightly, but for warmth, not war. At Winterfell's gates, Sansa waited in grey marten cloak, Bran in wheeled chair, Podrick behind Brienne, Davos, Samwell, even tiny Lady Lyanna Mormont leaning on spear though feverish from wounds. Arya dismounted, feet trembling. She crossed yard, each step echoing childhood races across cobbles. Sansa's eyes filled before she spoke. Arya opened her arms. They embraced, all ice between them forgotten. Jon joined, and for a moment Stark children stood whole again, ragged but alive. In Great Hall that evening, hearths roared. Goblets of mulled wine passed. Bards attempted songs, but tears choked verses. Arya sat quiet while victory washed over walls like dawn's first rays. Gendry approached, awkward in borrowed jerkin, and set a bundle before her. Wolf's blood reforged, daggers fused anew with Valyrian steel inlays. She traced patterns, heart swelling. He shrugged. "A thank you," he muttered. She nudged bench for him to sit. Outside, wolves howled under burgeoning spring moon. She listened, hearing Nymeria's distant echo among them. She knew the dire wolf roamed free still, leading her pack across green fields unshackled. Freedom, she thought, is a face one must craft for oneself. Later, after feast, Arya slipped from hall into Godswood. Snowmelt dripped from red leaves into icy pools. She knelt before Hearttree, pressing palm to smooth bark scarred by face. For first time in years, she prayed, not for death nor vengeance, but for quiet. She asked the old gods to teach her how to live without mask, how to mend edges needle could not sew. Wind rustled leaves, whispering secrets of the past. She smelled pine smoke, distant soup, damp earth, and something new, perhaps the future. She rose, wiped tears, and walked back toward lights of Winterfell, where voices of family waited, unafraid. Her story, she knew, would carry on, across tongues and firesides, across pages. But here, tonight, in the hush of reborn spring, Arya Stark let the song rest. For the first time since a butcher's boy bled beside a riverbank, she was simply a girl of the north, her pack intact, dawn blooming above ramparts once painted by bodies and sorrow. Somewhere far off, a rooster crowed, absurd, out of season, but hopeful. Arya chuckled at the stubborn bird, slipped through castle doors, and closed them gently behind her, leaving the night to dream of warmer days. The last embers of Winterfell's victory pyres floated skyward like solemn fireflies, but the castle refused to sleep. Hammer strikes rang against fresh beams as carpenters patched a breach in the north curtain wall. Stable boys hauled buckets awash with dragon-warm water to rinse blood from flagstones. Old Nan's apprentices scurried through upper corridors, stuffing arrow slits with rushes to seal gnawing drafts. Everywhere lingered the whiff of tallow and wet leather, of healing ointments and minds too restless for slumber. In courtyards lit by moon-washed torches, soldiers of half a dozen kingdoms took turns stirring cauldrons of thick onion stew, their voices weaving a tapestry of accents. Northmen growl beside soft reach cadence, Islander salt slang lapping at the crisp staccato of unsullied low Valyrian. If one closed one's eyes, it sounded almost like the king's tourney before the trident, save for the undercurrent of grief threading each note, a reminder that the long night's shadow was not yet banished but merely bruised by dawn's first blush. Arya Stark drifted through this midnight bustle with measured, deliberate steps. Her limbs still ached from the dive off Drogon's spine. Her back bore faint bruises where the wyvern's shattered rib had grazed her, yet her stride remained sure, predatory. She had learned in Bravos that pain meant little if discipline stood taller, and here, inside the halls that birthed her name, she would not limp. Ghost followed at her heel, silent as hoarfrost, eyes gleaming lantern white. She had left needle in its sheath beside her hip and carried instead a wicker basket of stale bread heels. Crusts charred black the cooks had set aside for pig slop. But this night they were meant for wolves. She crossed the training yard where Gendry knelt beside the new forge, face smudged with ash, arranging billets of castle-forged steel beneath a blanket of coals. Sparks pirouette upward like sprites around his shoulders. The fire stained the edges of the Reachman surcoat he wore now, a gift from Ser Bryce Cairn who had sworn fealty to the throne of joint banners. Gendry lifted his head when she passed, worry furrowing his brow. She offered the barest nod. She would speak later. For now she needed quiet in the Godswood. Quiet, though, was seldom found in a house of ghosts. Beyond the yard, a pair of Frey hostages, lanky Walder and round-cheeked Merritt, were sweeping the cloisters under Brienne's stern eye. They flinched at Arya's approach. Memory of a banquet soaked in their kin's blood still haunted them. Arya did not break stride. Brienne inclined her head in tacit salute and turned back to drill the boys on courtesy. "When a lady passes, you bow from the waist," she reminded. Merritt tried, stumbled over his broom, eliciting a weary sigh from the Maid of Tarth. The weirwood gate surrendered with a low groan, and the foxfire glow of the heart tree greeted Arya like an old conspirator. Red leaves quivered despite windless air, their faces sticky with melt dew. Moonlight dappled the pool beneath in silver islands, rippling each time a snowflake melted on the mirrored surface. She knelt at the water's edge and broke bread crusts into crumbling fragments. Ghost padded forward, dipped muzzle to drink but stopped, ears pricked. A low rumble vibrated in his throat. Not threat, but recognition. Across the pool, Bran Stark sat in his wicker chair, blanketed in gray wolf fur that dwarfed his slight frame. Summer, grown broad-shouldered and iron-sinewed, lay curled around the chair's base, luminous eyes tracking Arya's every motion. Bran raised one pale hand in greeting, and though his lips curved, his pupils swirled with storms far beyond these walls. "You always did feed crumbs to the pond," he said, voice soft yet carrying, as though the ancient birches whispered with him. Arya smiled faintly. "I thought if I fed the fish enough, one might grow monstrous and swallow the whole larder so I could escape needlework lessons." "Lady Septa Mordane feared you drown chasing your pet trout," Bran murmured. She never knew that the worst thing about a pond isn't drowning, its reflection. Arya let his riddle hover. She scattered crusts, listening to gentle plops. Carp stirred below the ice sheen, their pale bellies brushing frosted lamina. "I saw you in a dream," she admitted. "Just before we left Eastwatch, you stood upon a hill of swords and wept tears of fire." Bran tilted his head, a rook studying an insect. "Many dreams cross my path. Some are mine, some I borrow, some borrow me." His gaze sharpened, returning to brother once more. "But the tears were yours, Arya. You left them on the lake when you stabbed the Night King. I only carried them onward." She lowered eyes. "Does the weirwood show you what comes next? I see rivers of time, but their deltas braid. One channel leads to peace, another to yet unseen war. We stand now at the braid." Arya exhaled. "People talk of spring, fields to resow, cottages to mend. I'd hoped we had outrun more war. So had Robb. So had father," Bran said, voice brittle. "Yet men chase crowns like crows chase carrion. The corpse of winter is fresh. They will fight for the scraps." "Then we will fight them," Arya replied, fierceness simmering. She tossed final crust, then rose, brushing knees. "If skies darken, call to me." "I will," Bran promised. "But I may need you before then, for something smaller and larger." A snowmoth drifted between them, wings luminous. Arya waited. South of the neck, in the ruins of Moat Cailin, 3 Sellsword companies bivouac under false banners, Bran whispered. "Their captain carries a scroll sealed with a kraken and a lion. They intend to sail west and seize Old Town's harbor. Knowledge, Arya, is flame. If Old Town burns, so too will memory of this war's lesson." Arya felt the itch of urgency creep along spine. "You wish me to ride south? Ride, sail, fly, whichever keeps you unseen," Bran answered. A faceless shadow near their fire might steal the scroll and scatter the captains before spring's first blossom. Ghost wuffed, restless. Arya laid palm on his head. "I promised Jon I'd stay," she said quietly. "But the pack hunts where it must. Ghost stays with him," Bran said, petting Summer. "You will ride with Nymeria." She stiffened. "Nymeria hasn't allowed a hand touch her since the trident." Bran's smile touched only the corners of his eyes. She will allow yours. He lifted a pouch from his lap, a small leather sack no bigger than a sparrow's skull, stitched in Valyrian motifs. Inside is a seed from the heart tree. Plant it wherever you make camp. It will watch for me, and through it I will watch for you. Arya accepted the pouch. The leather felt warm, pulsing faintly. The seed within seemed to hum with unseen rootlets reaching for soil not yet found. She tied it to her belt. I leave before dawn. Before the wall menders miss you, Bran agreed. Gendry will forge excuses. He'll forge better than words, she mused, stepping back toward the gate. Keep Sansa safe. She paused. And Jon, if you see dragons in his storms, warn him. I see more than dragons, Bran whispered. I see a child yet unborn, carrying the howl of winter and the fire of summer, bridging houses that refuse to kneel. Guard your brother. The realm will need his heart. Arya's chest tightened. She bowed stiffly, then pivoted away, Ghost trotting at her side. At the gate she glanced back. Bran remained silent beneath scarlet leaves, eyes closed, mouth moving in prayer or prophecy. Snow started again, dusting his hair white. Morning found the castle's east stable in controlled madness. The new foal, coal-black with single white sock, had slipped its rope and galloped between stalls, knocking over a saddle rack and scattering a stack of iron horseshoes. Two novices pursued with grain pails, slipping on straw while the foal pranced near the hayloft ladder, tail flicking. Arya seized the trailing rope, murmured low Valyrian endearments, and the animal stilled. Stubborn but swift, she judged, handing rope to panting stable hand. Name him Whiplash. You'll know why when he's grown. Sansa entered then, cloak lined in undyed fox fur, cheeks flushed from dawn inspection of granaries. I wondered where you'd vanish, she said. No breakfast? The kitchens bake fresh honey oat bread. I can eat on saddle, Arya replied bright, but Sansa blocked the stall door with gentle firmness. You're leaving, aren't you? She asked, sadness draped like gossamer. I must. For Bran. For Jon. For us. Sansa studied her sister. The sharp jaw, the eyes that held storms and laughter both. You've earned rest, Arya. We all have. Rest is for the dead, and they've had enough of it. Arya softened her tone. I will return, Sansa. The pack survives. Sansa swallowed, then reached inside satchel and produced a folded scrap of embroidered linen. I sewed this when we were girls, before Father rode south. It's crooked, I know, and half the stitches pulled loose, but it's the direwolf banner. Take it. She pressed it into Arya's palm. The cloth smelled faintly of rosewater and cedar. Wherever you go, remember where home waits. Arya nodded, tucking the banner under her jerkin near heart. They embraced, arms tight, breathing the same air that once tasted of lemon cakes and childish quarrels. When they separated, neither owned a tear. Winter forged steel from water. Before mounting, Arya sought Gendry at the forge. He stood bare-armed amid haze, hammering quenching tongs around a dagger with a new pattern welded down its center, gleaming ripples along black steel. Take this, he said without turning, as though he felt her presence through sparks. He plunged blade into cask, hiss rose. Then he thrust it toward her by hilt. Stark and Baratheon forged together. New steel for new wars. Arya weighed it, a perfect dagger balanced for throwing. I thought Baratheon's words were ours is the fury. Yet you give away your best steel? A forge hoards nothing, he said. When you run out of daggers, come back and I'll make more. His gaze lingered on her cheek. Promise you will come back. I promise, she said, and though promises frightened her, she meant it. By midday, she crossed Winterfell's outer moat astride a rangy gray, heading south along King's Road. Ghost trotted one pace behind. He would escort until nightfall, then return. Flurries chased them until the road wound into the Wolfswood, where pines broke the wind and snow drifted deeper. She rode without hurry, listening. The forest had regained subtle music, squirrels chattering, a distant elk bugle, branches whispering thaw. Beneath that melody pulsed another. Running paws, dozens, maybe hundreds, pacing her unseen. At dusk, she made camp on a knoll above a shallow stream. She planted Bran's seed in mossy soil beside a rotted stump, smoothed snow over it, then knelt to whisper old first men words she'd once overheard Hodder hum to himself. The seed glowed faintly, as moon might beneath thin ice, then dimmed. She wrapped in blanket and gnawed on oatcake. When the first stars cut through blue twilight, shadows circled the clearing, lithe shapes gliding between branches. Ghost stepped to edge, hackles raised but not hostile. A low chuff answered. Then she saw Nymeria, colossal, scar-notched, for mottled gray and cream, her pack fanned behind. Wolves of unnatural size, born of forest, tempered by winter. Nymeria advanced until nose nearly touched Arya's brow. Here at last stood the tether between child and wanderer, unbroken though stretched across continents of grief. Arya held the she-wolf's amber gaze. "Sister," she whispered, "will you run with me one last time?" Nymeria's head dipped, massive. She pivoted and padded to stream, lapped once, then turned south, tail flicking expectation. Ghost emitted a soft whine, touched noses with Nymeria, then bounded north, their duties clear. Arya kicked snow over embers, tightened cloak, and jogged after the pack, her horse trailing by lead rope until wolves swallowed them all. They traveled 2 days through Tanglewood, seldom touching the main road. Wolves melt and reappear. They skirted crumbling holdfasts now garrisoned by Tully outriders, bypassed columns of refugees heading north to seek stark mercy. Arya left caches of dried meat with each frightened family they shadowed. A quiet tithe to roads once red with betrayal. On the third dawn, they reached the next fenland, where morning fog clung like spiderweb to reeds. Moat Caelan sprawled ahead, a carcass of towers slumped amid green slime, flanking the causeway like broken molars. Smoke coiled from hearth fires pitched in the shadow of basalt walls. Tents stitched from Myrish linen ringed the courtyard. Garish sigils daubed in crimson ochre fluttered, an uprooted lion strangled by kraken tentacles. It seemed some Sellsword thought humor infusing enemies' crests. From a vantage of Cattail Marsh, Arya studied sentry rotation.
Røff men launched at gate, weapons mismatched, armor repurposed.
Yet inside she glimpsed knights of clear discipline. Gold-plated breastplates, plumes the color of sunset. Mercenaries of the Golden Company, perhaps a splinter faction unsatisfied with Aegon's failed campaign. Their captain, Bran's vision insisted, guarded the scroll. Nymeria crouched beside Arya, hackles bristling. The she-wolf disliked stone dens. Arya stroked her shoulder, unslung bow, and whispered command. Nymeria slunk into reeds, pack dispersed like rain into grass. Only Arya advanced, adopting limp and stooped shoulders, the guise of a washerwoman seeking work. Channeling Mose Eller again, she coated her lips with greasy soot, smudged cheeks, and trudged onto causeway, head bowed. The gate guard smirked, baring crooked teeth. "What bleedin' wretch is this? Pottage for them what has coin," she rasped, showing earthen jar. "I cook fine nettle stew. Cool your guts after ale." He sniffed. "Let's Ave taste." She pulled lid, revealing thick broth spiced with wolfbane. They would taste bitterness first, numbness later. He slurped stupidly, waved her through as his tongue turned gummy. Inside the courtyard she passed stalls of salted cod, barrels of Dornish plums rotting under drizzle, racks of crossbows.
Men oeidscher dat dice, bet slaves, drank.
At a central pavilion of striped silk, 2 captains argued in Volantine dialect beside a war map. One wore kraken medallion, the other lion's paw. Between them, on a small ivory pedestal, rested a sealed scroll. Arya drifted closer, feigning fascination with a tray of rusty arrowheads. She tuned senses, the lion captain demanding extra galleys for swift strike, the kraken promising payment by Greyjoy merchants once Old Town burned, both cursing rumors that the Iron Bank had frozen certain loans after Cersei's death. When a slave boy bearing mulled wine tray approached, Arya stepped behind him, slipped small vial of poppy root at cup's rim. a stupor strong enough to fog memory but not taste buds. As he served the captains, she circled toward the pavilion's rear flap. Inside, a guard polished a mirror shield. She bent, dropping jar as though by clumsiness. Shards scattered. Broth splashed his boots. He cursed. She knelt apologizing, then flicked dragonglass shard across his calf, slicing artery. He collapsed, shock-muting voice. She eased him down, pressed cloth to wound, listening as his pulse slowed. She cut the scroll from pedestal, tucking it under tunic. Strained voices outside faded into slurred confusion, poppy root taking hold. She slipped out, keeping to canvas shadows until she reached latrine trench. There she rolled under a broken palisade board and crawled into marsh. A horn sounded, the guard discovered missing scroll. Shouts rose, horses whinnied. Arrows clattered, but Arya submerged to chin, reeds hiding her crown. When pursuit parties splashed knee-deep, Nymeria's pack struck. Gray shadows exploding from fog to hamstring riders dragged struggling men into water. Arya slithered opposite direction, emerged half-mile west where her horse waited. She mounted wet, urging the beast along deer track east toward Hag's Mire. By night, camped under driftwood lean-to, she inspected the stolen scroll. Wax bore sigil interlacing kraken and lion indeed, yet also a small sigil of golden rose. Tyrell? She broke seal. Inside, neatly penned, to Lord Alan Beesbury, Master of Coin, Citadel of Old Town. Deploy funds to secure harbor control under company of the shattered sigils. Upon capture, ensure Maester's pledge loyalty to Council of the Realm's restoration. Queen Marjorie approves 1/5 of grain tithe for mercenary. Wages. Baroness Eleanor Tyrell, on authority of His Grace King Tommen Baratheon. Arya swore under breath. Not Kraken nor Lion alone. Reach Gold financing sells words to restore realm by seizing knowledge's heart. Did Marjorie know she bankrolled treason? Or did lesser Tyrells conspire? Either way, Old Town lay in peril, and she must warn Maester Samwell's kin. She placed scroll in oilskin pouch, then stared into frozen embers. Beyond the treeline, wolves howled lullaby. Sleep came scant, but dreams showed ravens spiraling over the high tower in black storm. The journey south quickened under Nymeria's guidance. Wolves loped ahead, clearing paths, driving off bandits. Arya hid at day, rode at night, skirting holdfasts loyal to Tyrells. She left messages carved in weirwood saplings for Bran, seeds buried. Twice she glimpsed ravens perched upon branches near dawn, heads tilted as though greeting. At Maidenpool, she traded her horse for a nimble bay gelding and purchased passage upon a flat-bottomed skiff to sail down the Honeywine disguised as a wine merchant's niece. The boatman spoke of Riverland's unrest. Ser Edmure gathering banners, Riverrun again a redoubt for Tully pride, Ironborn raids renewing along the Cape of Eagles. War's embers indeed smoldered. 3 days later, the high tower pierced the broom, white beacon leaning into sky. Ships choked the estuary. Trading cogs, war galleys, Drommons bearing Tyrell sails. Smoke drifted from a charred sloop half-sunk at quay. The harbor master's ledger spilled ink across pages. Delays, tariffs, accusations of sabotage. Arya slipped ashore amid crates of cinnamon, vanish into crowds of Septa High scholars. She sought Sam at the Citadel, but novices barred entry citing quarantine of higher libraries after a vault breach. Rumors said masked men had attempted to steal Dragonlore tomes. In the Yard of Ravens, she intercepted a robed figure feeding grain to pigeons. Tall, broad, scent of old parchment. "Sam," she hissed.
Samuel Tarliflancht, spectacle askew.
Recognition dawned, and he ushered her into alcove behind Bell Tower. Gilly emerged from shadow, babe on hip, gazing warily. Arya delivered the scroll. Sam scanned it, face draining of color. Eleanor Tyrell, a cousin to Marjorie. Ambitious, rumored lover to Paxter Redwine. He tapped parchment. If Old Town falls, the High Tower's beacon becomes a golden hostage. "We must warn the lords of Old Town," Arya said. "They hold council tonight," Gilly murmured. "Lord Leighton's daughters see omens in the flame." Then I'll be their omen, Arya replied. Night draped Old Town in velvet. The Hightower's upper ballroom flickered with candles as Lord Leighton entertained nobles. Vicars of House Hightower, Maester Theobald, Septon Barth's grandchildren, and Lady Melara Crane, whose wines accounted for half the Reach's spirits. Arya scaled an outer buttress with grappling hook stolen from a dockyard tinker, reached a leaded window. Inside, conversation poured like spiced wine. She eased window ajar, crouched upon balustrade above dais. Leighton, thin, beard silvered, spoke of repairing lighthouse mirrors shattered in the last storm. Eleanor Tyrell stood near, draped in emerald silk, eyes cool. She gestured to parchment on table, matching wax seal. Arya anchored rope, then dropped silently onto drapery behind tapestries. She listened, Eleanor urging preemptive alignment with Crown's new harbor peacekeeping force. Citing Lannister dragons absent, northern armies spent. Leighton hesitated, but many vassals nodded, fearful of standing alone. Before consensus hardened, Arya stepped from shadows. A peacekeeping force built on Kraken promises will drown you, she declared. Gasps erupted. Guards lunged, but she flipped forward, dagger at Eleanor's throat. This lady bargains your lives to sellswords already camped at Moat Cailin. Their blades thirst for library fires. Eleanor sneered, attempting composure. Assassin's lies. Arya tossed stolen scroll onto table. Your seal, your handwriting. Ask Maester Theobald to compare. Silence suffocated. Theobald examined parchment, cheeks flushing. It is genuine, he whispered. Eleanor's mask cracked. Rage flashed. She reached for pearl-handled dirk, but Arya twisted her wrist, sending weapon skittering. Guards seized Eleanor. Leighton exhaled tremulous thanks. How came you by this shadow? From the pikes of Moat Cailin, Arya said. Their captains march west. Send Raven to Jon Snow. He holds the neck. Leighton nodded, gestured to scribe. He then knelt, offering Arya his family's thanks. She declined bow. Guard your books, she said. Knowledge defeats night more than swords. Ravens flew. Jon's reply arrived within days. Tully outriders ambushed the Sellsword companies en route to Saltpans, scattering them. Greyjoy rebels withdrew fleet when Marjorie's court disavowed Eleanor's plot. Old Town remained free. Sam embraced Arya in tearful relief. Gilly named her Bright Wolf, yet Arya could not rest. She dreamt of Bran tethered to snow-choked tree, of Jon raising torch toward gathering storm, of Sansa weeping alone in Hall of Shattered Crowns. She recognized the tug. Her path again diverged. She sought Sam on stone parapet overlooking Honeywine. I must leave, she declared. He stammered. But why? Because whispers travel west of Westeros. When the world's map ends, truths hide at its edge. If men covet knowledge, I will find it first. Sam blinked behind spectacles. Sail where no cartographer mapped? West, beyond sunset, she answered. Nymeria will run coastline. Bran will watch through seed I plant on deck. I will return with maps inked in blood of monsters or not at all.
Sam swallowed.
I have read legends of shadow lands where the sea falls in silver curtains, where krakens sing. If you see libraries older than Valyria, send word. I will. She shook his hand, soft scholar's flesh clasping calloused assassin's fingers. Gilly pressed a leather-bound book into Arya's satchel, a children's treatise on Westeros flora. For when you miss home, she said. That evening at quayside, Arya purchased a weather-stained cog named the Dawn's Farewell. Its captain, Ronald Rivers, a bastard of Stormlands, claimed he'd once outrun Euron's silence by hugging mists around Skagos. He laughed when Arya required cabin for a direwolf. I've carried worse cargo, he said. Nymeria boarded at low tide, unsettling crew. Arya settled coin and chilled wine for passage, then stood at prow, winds tugging her hair like eager children. As moorings cast off, she glimpsed on pier a lone figure. Gendry, newly arrived aboard riverboat, hammer strapped across back. He shouted, voice stolen by gulls. She could not hear his words, but the shape of them, come back, was clear. She raised fist, clutched the embroidered direwolf from Sansa against breast, and mouthed, "Promise." The tide carried them beyond the high tower's fading lantern, into a horizon bruised violet. Wolves howled from distant dunes. Stars unveiled themselves like ancient runes awaiting translation. Arya breathed salt and possibility. She closed eyes and whispered, "A girl is Arya Stark of Winterfell. A girl sails free." The cog surged westward, sails billowing with stories yet unspoken. And the world, wide as grief and wonder, awaited the bright wolf's next footfall.